Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production, and we have a bit of a special one here. This is the first interview with a non-Canadian Flesh and Blood member.
That's
Period.
right.
And we decided because it's such a special event that we get a nice special player to go with the special event here. So I know everyone is super into the all kind of everfest this, everfest that. Let's spoil everything. We're gonna take it back a notch. I haven't seen many interviews. Not a lot of people know about the New Zealand and Australian Nats here, and so myself with my co-creator, co-commentator, co-compatriot Rob, and I'm joined here, Kieran Carnegie. I don't know if I'm
Carnegie?
butchering that.
Yep.
Carnegie, fantastic. Okay, Mr. Carnegie here. Kieran managed to top eight on Chane, the only Chane to top eight. I want to say one of the only chains to top 24. Now that I'm recalling, there wasn't a ton of chain in day two, was there?
Only one other.
Only one other. So I mean, bringing it back for my chain brethren here. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the New Zealand spectacle here. It was in the I think the Sky Stadium. I don't know
Yep.
if yeah, Sky, quite a big statement piece here. So we're gonna talk a little bit to Kieran about the Battle Hardened event, the night before the Nationals event, a little bit of a deck tech, just get the whole kin caboodle here. So starting off here with the Battle Hardened event. So this was, for anyone who doesn't know, the Battle Hardened event was the event before Nats. So going right into Nats, I believe it was on the Friday.
Yep.
And I've heard a good chunk of players wanted to like rest or test a couple things out for Nationals day before, didn't want to go too crazy here. But you decided, might as well go in there with Kano and just decide to win it. And so
Yep.
I've got a couple questions about that. So is there any particular reason you wanted to play in that event in the first place?
Mostly to win it.
That's fair.
I'm extremely comfortable on Kano. I knew that my absolute nemesis, the local Wellington player Nick Holding, who ended up winning Nationals, wasn't going to be there.
Mhm.
And so I was extremely sure that I'd be able to turn up, win, and just rack up some Kano prowess.
No,
That's
that's
awesome.
fair. I totally understand. Um, were you already kind of confident in your chain deck kind of going in for Nationals? Because a lot of people they go in there, they switch out a sideboard card, put one in here, put one in here, test the matchup, just completely blow up a couple pieces here. So were you already kind of confident enough in that you're just like, let's forget about it and just do Battle Hardened?
On Friday, I knew I'd be playing Chane. I didn't know what the list would be yet. I finished it at 1:30 in the morning.
Nice.
Oh yeah, you're you're cutting it close there. 1:30 on the Saturday.
Really was.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, that's wow. You're yeah.
It's
Okay,
never too
okay,
late.
fair enough. So incredible that the kind of I know LSS has done a couple changes with like the whole battle hardened system and with the calling and all kinds of things surrounding there. So how was the general atmosphere? I think you mentioned there were around 60ish, 60 odd people at the battle hardened event. So how was like the general atmosphere? Was everyone just fun loving? Was anyone like all just stressed and trying to get it off their chest here? So what was the kind of general atmosphere there?
The atmosphere was really good. Like, there's not a huge amount of pressure on Blitz. We all understand that sometimes, often, Blitz is just a dice roll to see who wins. There's a lot of RNG in it. And so everyone was just chilling, having a good time, because the venue was a lot better than we were expecting it to be, if I'm being perfectly honest. So
Fair.
we had an amazing view there, like big windows going the entire way along the convention area, looking out onto the stadium. And we could just sort of wander out for a breather into the stadium area, which is super cool. So everyone's just, having a good time.
That's
That sounds
awesome. I
great.
think that's
Maybe the
like,
people who were losing weren't having as good a time, but
but it's Blitz,
definitely from
so
my
you
It's all
gotta,
relative. It's all
you
relative
gotta,
here.
exactly. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I'm sure that's probably the best case scenario for a pre-Nats kind of environment, right? Where people are taking it easy. You've done as much testing as you could, right, up until that
yeah.
point, and it's like let's just have a good time.
And of course, the event was hosted by Sushi Night, and Steve, the owner of
Mm,
Sushi Night, was there. And nothing that Steve is around is going to feel bad. The entire
that's
crew there
great.
are just amazing people. They're a lot of fun, and they put a lot of effort into making sure the atmosphere is just cool.
That's
No,
awesome.
I
That's
definitely
great.
saw that they really did like during the national stream. He actually like he was there. They actually cared about it. They took people's comments into account, fixed the lighting. Like he didn't.
Yep.
I
Mm.
know there were a couple things during the stream. This was like, probably the only stream I've ever seen Flesh and Blood related that was continuously improved upon based on the actual viewers. So it actually, I understand completely. It actually shows that it's nice. It's nice that they care about an event like this. So, other than that, was there any particular matchup? I know obviously 5-0'd, right? But what in that stretch there, was there any particular matchup that gave you like a bit of a scare, pause, anything that you were a little bit worried about?
Aggro Ira is always hard. Like, if they just happen to have Snatch Razor Reflex on turn 2, you're just fucked. But there was only one Ira in the event. His mate of mine, Sean Stanley. I faced him in round 4, and it ended up going pretty well. He was playing a bit suspicious in one of the early turns, and I told him, "Look, mate, just hit me with the razor." So he hit me with the razor, and he lost because he hit me with the razor then instead of holding it for a more important turn.
I mean,
You successfully baited him out right there.
Yep.
Other than you got razor and pummel. Either you have them or you don't. You just
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's fair.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
I was really confident in most of the other matchups that would a week ago have been considered problematic. Like Chane no longer has Duskblade for Blitz, so it's like Chane's not really going to be a problem anymore. They'll just lose to the Ultims. I just have to avoid them round 1, round 2.
That's right.
Briar, with the changes to the errata, no one was going to be on Briar. But Briar is, it's hard as Kano when you sit down against someone who's like, look, I'm just going to do your entire life total turn 1.
Yeah.
Yep. That's true. It's not even that hard for Briar. You always start on the
It's really not.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So the next thing, I mean, I saw a couple pictures of it, but the main event, the main New Zealand Nationals main event, Sky Stadium, I've seen some pictures. The pictures probably don't do it any justice, honestly. I imagine it was a lot cooler playing there in person, just in a stadium. How was that?
It was very cool. So we're up in the very top layers of the stadium in what normally are the sort of dignitary boxes for watching the rugby.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So we could wander out into the dignitary seats, the top level seats in the stadium, and just sort of relax. But otherwise, you're in this lovely big room, big windows all the way through, pretty solid food too. So yeah, it's pretty good, especially considering it was like the backup venue.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't heard of that. Oh my goodness.
Well, because when dates got changed and then there was construction in places, there's a whole drama apparently. But yeah, it was a really good venue.
Wow.
Oh, well, I mean,
do you know what the first choice venue was? I don't know if you remember, but would it have beat this one? It sounds very hard to beat this.
I think it was down on the waterfront.
Okay.
So
okay. Yep. Has its own perks.
A lot of very nice venues.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean,
kind of makes me jealous because we got something a little less, less spectacular in Canada.
We got one that wasn't even worth being streamed apparently. So you know what? For us, it's convention center in the middle of nowhere.
We'll make a better effort next year.
We're gonna make it a much better effort next year. So
oh yeah, hard to do worse. That's for sure.
It really is. So enough about smashing the Nats comparison, which there is really none here. So the Nats main event itself. Walk me a little bit through about like how you yourself prep for Nats. So what was the mindset going in when you chose your classic constructed and eventually ending on Chane, right? At 1:30 in the morning. Well, sorry. You decided on the Chane already, and then you decided on the deck list after. So based on the first part, how did you kind of decide on Chane?
So I played Chane through the Road to National season last year. So I came 8th in Road to Nationals Nelson. I bubbled in 2 other Road to Nationals. And Chane, like, is a Rune Blade. I love Rune Blades because it merges the CC deck I used to play being Katsu and my Blitz deck, which is Kano.
Yeah.
And it is. He's basically Katsu Kano. And then, of course, Seeds got banned, which kind of just made the deck a lot worse. So I switched over to Prism, which I had a huge amount of success with in the June-July cooling, where I ended up going 11-1 in Swiss there.
Oh yeah.
And I really like Prism, so I switched to that at about the same time Nick Holding did, and the two of us were practicing a lot on Prism. In fact, we had a Nationals testing event both on Prism, which he knocked me out of the top cut in a mirror on. And I liked it. And then this errata announcement came out saying, oh, this Briar hero is a little bit good.
Fair enough.
Just a little.
just a little. I mean, when you see the results of New Zealand Nationals, you're like, she's not actually that good. But it was explained that, well, newer players have a huge problem with aggro. And so I'm looking at this being like, well, this deck, it fucks Prism. It's a really, really hard matchup.
Mhm.
Against a bad Briar, you can just slap down a Parable of Humility and it goes a bit better, but still not good.
Mm-hmm.
And at a national level event, every player that is undecided that sees an errata notification that Nationals is exempted from will go to the deck that's been getting the errata.
Fair enough.
Because it's clearly the strongest deck there is if it's
Mhm.
getting. So it's like, okay, absolutely can't play Prism into this. It's just far too likely I'm going to get a round one Briar and just be out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I looked back at Viserai, but I don't like playing control that much. I'm an aggro player at heart.
Mm.
So I built a really janky aggro Viserai, like running things that nobody else would run, like Bloodspill Invocation.
Oh yeah.
Because when you crack Spellbound Creepers into a Bloodspill Invocation, you get your 4 rune chance on hit, and then you hit them with a rune flash, and then you just run away with the game. It's amazing.
Mm.
And the deck worked really, really well. It had about a 50-50 into Chane. It crushed Prism. It crushed most Briar, and I was feeling pretty confident about it up until Wednesday. So the 4 days before the event begins, where one of my mates from Northland came down, Sean Stanley, on a way more optimized Channel Mount Heroic Briar, and he smoked me.
4 days
And I
before
was
the
like,
event.
okay. 4 days before the event, I'm sitting there
Right,
being
yeah.
like, okay, this deck that I've been practicing for the last 2 weeks actually loses to a matchup I thought it was favored in.
Mm.
No one in Wellington had a Channel Mount Heroic variant Briar that was as good as his.
Mm.
And so I went back to Chane
Yeah.
and decided, screw it. If I can't get there by playing a real Runeblade, I'm just going to high roll and get lucky, and we'll see what happens.
Perfect.
And I got lucky
Yeah.
and I rolled people. It
No,
worked.
no, that's Chane in a nutshell.
In a
So,
nutshell, yeah.
second thing, moving on here, did you kind of set any goals for yourselves, and what were they, just based on like what you were trying to accomplish in that? Of course, we kind of rolled into Chane a little bit pseudo randomly here after kind of trying the other options here. But did you have any
Yep.
goals for yourself going into it with Chane?
I wanted to make top 24.
Okay.
When I went to my first nationals 2 years ago now, I went 1-3 drop.
Mhm.
I won 2 of the side events, but still main event 1-3 drop.
Mhm.
And the one thing I wanted to do was improve on that. So I wanted to make the top 24.
Okay.
And I'm extremely comfortable with draft. I think I'm one of New Zealand's best drafters. So I knew I'd probably go 4-2 at worst, 5-1 likely in the draft. So I just wanted a CC deck that I would go 3-3 on.
Yeah.
And I ended up
Fair
doing
enough.
it. It all worked out.
I think that's a super reasonable goal to just like cash out at the very least at top 24, and then try to like know what your strengths are. Like you're pretty much exactly like Yuki, our Canadian national champ. She's 6-0 draft, I think 3-3 or 4-2. Like all you needed to do is like, you're very good at one thing, so you don't really need to worry too much about it, and just get something that at least gets you that other part of the way. So I totally understand where you're coming from here. So as far as classic constructed and draft, how did you approach kind of the testing? I think you mentioned a little bit about the CC part, but even for draft, how did you approach testing for those formats?
I've done an unreasonable number of drafts with friends. We cracked cases of Aria and just did draft after draft out of the boxes.
Mhm.
And then we sat down, myself and a mate, Jonathan Miller. We put every card in the set down and we made a tier list. What am I drafting when? What am I drafting if I want to remain open? What is forcing this particular hero? And basically, after that point, every time I opened a pack, I knew exactly what I wanted. It was very, very, very quick, very easy. And they let me build up the experience in drafting where I could just look at a pack, and instead of having to spend a bunch of time thinking what the pick is, the pick's quick, and then I can spend the rest of the pack memorizing it so I know what everyone else is on when it cycles back to me.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a very good use of time, just based on like, oh, it takes a really long time to read signals and to give signals, right? And
Yeah.
if that's what takes the most time, and it's really hard to reduce the time because everyone's going to give off different signals depending on what pod you are and who you're playing with. You might as well improve on the one thing you do know, which is the set. Just know the set inside and out, know the tiers, as you
Right.
said. So I think that's very like, that sounds very logical and something that, I mean, I would have liked the time. I think the issue is that we didn't have Tails Unlimited when our Nats. We only have first edition, so we had to
Right.
grab.
It was a very limited amount of product that we
Yeah.
could use for our drafts. That's right. Yeah.
So that was one thing, but I think even then, I think that's like a super great idea that people should try to do if they really, really want to get good at draft, is to take a very similar approach if they can. As far as kind of, I think you already kind of alluded on it. Your overall strategy going into CC and draft, you were kind of thinking about 5-1 ish, 5-1 in draft, and then knowing you likely need, I think, 9-3 to like clinch like top 8. You need, I think 9-3 was to kind of clinch it. So you would have needed to go 3 and 3 essentially, pretty much.
I guess if it was a 6-0, it would be a 3-3, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So was there kind of like I'll get 5-1, I just need to get 3-3? Was there anything else strategically that you were considering when you were going into the Nats?
Not really. So it was basically, I'm comfortable enough with the draft. I just need to win 3 CC games, preferably the first 3.
Yeah.
And then the first 3 went really well. I was thinking, okay, actually, with how I draft, maybe better than top 24s on the cards here.
Yeah.
And that ended up being quite stressful. So I went 3-3 in the first CC. Sorry, 3-0.
Yeah.
I went 2-1 in the first draft. There's a stream game of me against Cayle McCreath. It's a hilarious stream game because I had a 0% chance of winning it. He knew it. I knew it. Stream chat certainly did not.
We're going to bring that up later. Don't worry about that.
Cool. The CC games afterwards, I lost to Matt Rogers on the aggro hold'em. I lost to Nick on Prism because I made a huge mistake, and I beat a Bravo. So I got 8th seed coming in for the second day, which put me in the hell seat of having to 3-0 a draft from the 8th seed in the top pod. And I did it.
Yeah,
but it was certainly stressful.
But you were making that lemonade with the lemons. You were doing what you had to do there. I mean,
it's funny how the success made your expectations a little bit higher at that point, and then the stress kind of came in after that.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe I can go for first. Maybe I can win the whole thing.
I mean, I was pretty sure I'd never win. I don't think I could beat Matt Rogers' deck. I think beating Cayle McCreath on Bravo and CC is very hard with my deck without seeds. I can give it a good shot for sure, but I'm not winning that without luck. But if I saw Teedu in the top 8, I was probably going to run over him if I didn't fuck up again.
No, fair enough. I mean, you already kind of alluded to it. Going through a first couple matches, I know your first 3 games, it was Briar, Oldham, Briar, something along those lines. And that was kind of as planned based on your sideboard. You had the strats, you had the matchups. You were already favored into it for the Briar. So that's kind of everyone understands how that works, right? So I want to go into like your 5-0. As you alluded to, you see Cayle. He's looking at you. You're looking at him. You already know your decks. Was there any chance you're taking that Lexi into a win? Or okay, because his pool. He posted a picture of his pool on Discord, and I think on the Guardian chat, and it looked nuts. So
his pool was great, and I understood from the very beginning that the only way I was winning that game is if he didn't have a defense reaction turn 1. He had a defense reaction turn 1.
Right.
My deck could have beaten him if I had certain other cards, which I didn't have. But if I'd had, say, a Lightning Press that I could have hit a few times, sinking it when necessary, Cayle, he has probably the best memory of any fair play I'm aware of. He knows your deck order. He knows his deck order. And you see in the draft game against me is that he takes a big turn from me, drops down to 3 life, because he knows that my follow-up turn will suck, and he knows for sure that his follow-up turn is going to be awesome because here's Glacial Footsteps, here's Mulch for 8, here's an Entwine Earth for 8 or something. Just repeated banging turns. If I'd been able to sink a Lightning Press, he wouldn't have expected it because he would have known all of the cards around it. And that big lightning turn where I got the Frazzle, Mark of Lightning, Electrify, double dipping, could have killed him there if I had that card, which I didn't.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, that makes sense.
But that was... The thing about Ice Lexi is that she's a great control deck. You can throw out these massive lightning-based turns to swing tempo, but it's a really consistent deck. You know exactly how much damage it's doing at any given point. And when you've got defense reactions and rejuvenate, you can stop that damage. And then she decks out.
Fair enough.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. So I'll take the mic from Eric for a little bit. So jumping now into round 8, the round against Nicholas. So you mentioned in the document that you forgot to add an eclipse in this matchup.
Yep.
So I was wondering, because there was one turn where you hit that unfortunate banish with Chane. Do you think that the eclipse in this situation might have made a difference, or you think it was kind of a lost cause at that point? Maybe you can
So,
explain a bit. Yeah.
so to explain, if for anyone who hasn't read my little write-up, I played a belittle and shuffled my deck like an absolute moron about turn 5, turn 6. Turn 5 had to have been turn 5, because turn 6 I banished a Plunder Unread, a second Plunder Unread, 2 red Flocks, an E-Strike, and a Conch. And I mean, it's hilarious when this happens to Chane players because we're relying on RNG a lot of the time, and sometimes it slaps us. But Teedu recognized at that point that I'd just lost a huge portion of the remaining damage in my deck. And when we realized that there was no Eclipse, because I'd cycled through my deck a turn or so later, he realized that he could actually just block me out. And so he switched to blocking me out instead of trying to go for damage. So I didn't necessarily need to have been able to resolve Eclipse at any time, but the threat of it forces him to change his strategy.
Right.
It forces him to play proactively rather than reactively. And Chane can always take out Prism when she's spending cards. But when she's only blocking, it's really hard.
Right.
So
and I assume he found out you were also missing Eclipse. He knew from you found it in your deck box on the side, and I guess maybe you showed it to him.
Okay. Oh yeah, because we're mates, so I was just like, oh no, dude, look at what's not in my deck right now.
Oh no.
So he decked me out when he was on 3 life. So if I'd had any of those plunder runs or the flocks, that would have been enough damage.
That was otherwise close game, actually, very close.
Yeah. Considering that I wasn't running Eclipse, I had some unbelievably bad banishes, and he got a turn 1 library.
That helps.
The game was incredibly close. But,
icing on top of the cake.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
That was my. I think that was the sole play mistake I made in the tournament was that belittle shuffling my deck. I didn't need to. It was only 3 damage to get that Minowism out. I didn't need to do it. I did. So,
but you couldn't have known at that point of shuffling. Shuffling could have given you better RNG, maybe.
I had my pitch stack going. I knew.
Oh, okay, that's right.
That later turns were going to be good.
Right.
So going for that and running the risk of the shuffle going badly is pure greed, and that is a mistake at a nationals level event I should not be making. I did.
Fair enough.
It happens sometimes, yeah. I like what you said about just the Eclipse having that threat, that presence of knowing that you cannot switch your strategy against me knowing there's an Eclipse in my deck, right? But knowing that it's gone at that point just shifted the tides completely. So that's a very good point, yeah. So going from now round 8 to round 9, where you faced off against Matt Rogers, I don't know. Did you know if he had an aggro deck, more of an aggro Oldhim deck going in? No, so that was a surprise running into it. I was wondering, had you known if that it was going to be an aggro deck, would that have changed your sideboard strategy against
absolutely.
him?
So I was running time snap potions against him. I was running energy potions. I had 3 invert existence in there. Not because I was ever going to actually get a damage off on them, but because they're a blood debt card, so I can use them to summon Ursa at some point. The matchup gets pretty bad for Oldhim if I get Ursa out for multiple turns. So I was running, 6 non-blockers, 7 non-blockers that I wouldn't have otherwise been running. And due to some extremely annoyingly timed ice reactions on his behalf early, I got stuck with some of those non-blockers for like 4 turns. I remember I had a turn where I was looking at it and saying, I've got 4 non-blocks in hand. I've got Art of War, Invert Existence, Energy Potion, Time Snap Potion. This is awful.
Wow. I don't think I've heard of a worse hand, honestly. In most...
Oh, wait until you hear the hand that came later in that game. When I drew 3 Morvrian Skies and a Shadow Puppetry with a Shadow Puppetry in Arsenal. Beautiful. And then, of course, banished nothing.
Not even an attack action to go along with all your Morvrian Skies.
The game was bad from the very beginning. I went for a really cheeky Art of War to push damage before he got an Arsenal. Started resolving it too quickly, and he wanted to Blizzard in response. So I got Judge Called at the very beginning of the round, which always puts you on edge.
Yeah.
And then drew 3 instead of 2 because my hands were sweating, so I got Judge Called again.
Oh my goodness.
And the resolution of those got rid of all my non-attacks that I was going to be drawing and gave me an invert in the potion that I was stuck with. And of course Matt knew this because he got to see them. And so he kept on ice reacting to bloody things, leaving them on top of my deck. So it went badly to begin with, almost entirely based on my sideboarding decisions. And then he put a lot of pressure out that I just couldn't block because I had all these bloody non-blockers.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. How did the judge call work when you drew the third card there? Did they put a random card from your hand back on top? Is that how it worked? Or what's the mechanics of this judge ruling? Yeah.
Cards in hand and cards that would be drawn revealed. Opponent gets to pick where they go.
Oh, opponent picks. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so
Gotcha.
all of my lovely cards that I would quite like to have been drawing went to the bottom of the deck.
Gotcha.
Now, of course, afterwards we realized that we actually screwed up the judge call as well, just to make everything that much worse, because I'd banished a card to draw 2 to that Art of War. But when we're rewinding to the beginning of Art of War Resolving, that card's not banished yet.
Right. Wow.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it was a clusterfuck, but that happens occasionally.
Yeah.
You get a little bit nervous playing against someone who's really, really good at the game that you're not used to playing against.
Yeah. And hopefully he didn't take it in a bad way. Like hopefully he knew that accidents happen. And
yeah, no, Matt's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's looking at me like, oh, Kieran, you're playing like a moron. The judge knows me. He's going, oh, Kieran, you're playing like a moron. I'm sitting there, you're playing like a moron. But, you know.
Oh man, yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, it does. Awesome. So now we're going to go into the top 24 of the next day. So looking at the draft portion of top 24, you had mentioned that you forced Briar into your pod. I was wondering, what was your reasoning for forcing Briar? You seem to have some knowledge of the other players at that point, so you're able to make some calls there. Yeah.
So the good thing about being in the high level tables is that people you can rely on to actually draft properly. No one's just YOLO drafting rares.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
It's actually like we saw this in the calling in June, where the people who didn't have a chance of making top 8 just rare drafted because they already had their prize money. They weren't going to get more prize money by winning more games, so might as well take good cards. But in this, of course, there's only 2 people in that pod who are safe. And they, of course, want to have the higher seeds. You know, it's very important for Prism to get the choice when she goes first or second in various matchups. Likewise, any Room Blades. And so you sit down and look at the table, and I'm getting passed to by a player I know for a fact is going to force Guardian. Teedu. Next to him is a player who is a bit flexible, and then another Guardian Forcer. Then Cayle. And another Guardian Forcer. And so you look at and you know for a fact, we're going to have these 3 Oldhams. Cayle's stuck between 2 Oldhams. He's an amazing drafter. He knows he's stuck between 2 Oldhams. He's going Lexi. He doesn't go Briar for as much as far as I'm aware. To my left, I've got a Runeblade Forcer and 2 flexible players. So I'm the best placed person on this table to go Briar. It's the deck I'm the best with. I play lots of Runeblades. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to force Briar. It's the best deck. I'm in the best position on the table to do it. And it worked. And yes, all 3 people I thought were going to be Oldhams end up on Oldham.
Yeah.
And people ended up on Lexi with an actually amazing deck. So it was a good read.
Yeah. From my experience drafting, I always kind of assume that people are going to take Briar whenever they can because she's just an amazing draft hero, in Tales of Aria. So I'd always be afraid of it. I'd always be afraid of taking Briar.
It's been my experience that the higher the quality of the draft in New Zealand, the more Oldhams you get. So the top 8 of a skirmish I was in had 5 Oldhams, 3 Briar, 1 Lexi. But starting that day, there was a 5 Briar pod.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And
awesome.
I could have taken Oldham, I could have taken Lexi if the cards are going for it. But those would be 2-1 decks. I didn't think I could go for the 3-0, so I was like, I have to take the gamble here. There's no difference between 1 loss and 3 losses for me. It must be 3 wins. So I have to go for the thing that gives me 3 wins and only 3 wins.
All or nothing. Not fair enough.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. So I guess jumping into the final game of the Nationals here, into the quarterfinals, where you were faced against Rohan. So I was wondering, going into this matchup, I believe you were against Viscera here.
Yep.
How did you see this matchup going from the Chane perspective? Were there any lines or strategies that you, or I should say, win conditions that you can employ against Viscera specifically, or was it more of a kind of feel as you go?
Rohan's one of, if not New Zealand's best Rimblade player,
Mm,
and I knew that he was not going to try to OTK me. I knew he wasn't bad
okay.
enough to think that that would work. So he was going to come at me with every aggro card he possibly could, and I was going to respond, and whichever one of us went harder, faster won. We're both very aware of this from the very beginning. So he cracks his Skeletor reasonably quickly because he needs damage, he needs rune chance. I'm using my armor relatively quickly. Like we're just slapping each other in the face as fast as we
I
possibly
I
can.
wanted to see this game on stream. I was very
Yeah.
sad when we didn't get to see this one on stream, but I can imagine it. I can just two people just
So
punching each other.
the tech I have for triple rune blades running into rune blades is triple invert existence.
Good card.
Because I can shoot his targets for rattlebones, and that just destroys his turns, and then at any point in the game I just have 6 arcane damage.
Right.
So I knew that his lethal range was if he ever got to 6 life, I killed him.
Right. And
He actually had to kill me to kill me.
that's fair. And at the very end there, I know your final decision, you have the 2 inverts. You're staring down 2 inverts here with 1 life. Walk me through that one a little bit.
Right. So he comes in with, it's actually a really solid turn. Like there's 7 or 8 rune chance, multiple attacks, follows up with the sword, and I'm forced to block with 2 cards, going to 1 life.
Right.
I've got 2 inverts out, so I know I've got 4 arcane damage. He's on 6 life. The point of going to 1 specifically here is that no matter what he does, he can't use Skull Cap. He's got no other source of arcane barrier. So as long as I can fire off these 2 inverts, I just need to do 2 damage to him to win.
Right.
I've got a hand where I can keep a blue, which I have to keep, of course, blues, and either a red bounding Demigon or a yellow Captain's Call. Basically, which of these 2 cards do I block with? And it's a 50-50 here, basically. So I know the position in deck of every bounding Demigon except 1 blue, just from how the game's rolled out.
Right.
I know the position of all my Unhallowed Rights. I know I'm not in danger of hitting any of those, which are the dangerous cards, because I can't play them from Blood Debt without having played a non-attack. I know that all 3 of my howls have been recurred. 3? No, 2 of the howls have been recurred. Don't know where the 3rd one is. Probably soon.
Right.
So I decide the best chance I've got of winning here is I block with the Captain's Call, keep the Demigon, and my turn's going to be invert him twice to get him to 2 life, Demigod him for 3, which takes 1 or 2 cards from him if he gets unlucky with Mulverian Skies. I know he's going to be running a lot of those 2 blocks. And then sword him for 2 physical. That takes 2 or 3 cards out of him. There's no way he kills me with 2 cards in hand next turn, and then I kill him the following turn guaranteed. And I banish the other Demigon, which kills me to Blood Debt. I come in for 3 physical, I come in for 2 physical, I come in for 4 arcane. And the real kicker is that if I kept that
the Captain's Call, you could have played
then I would have had 2 arcane on the sword and I would have won.
Oh no.
Yeah, because you just play it out, get the bounding, and then your Rosetta's online.
Yep. And I think I should probably have paid more attention to exact ordering and maybe seen that there was a risk on this, but I was getting pretty tired at this point.
No, you're already
I flipped the coin and screwed it up basically.
Yeah.
But that's that's aggro mirrors. Sometimes it comes down to a coin flip. I definitely I God turned him earlier, got like 25 damage through. Turn before I had no attacks. I was definitely seeing the highs and I was definitely seeing the lows with that deck.
You got the full Chane experience in one game.
Yeah. And I knew I was going to be doing that through the event. Like I picked Chane knowing that this randomness was going to occur, hoping that it would be in my favor. And it worked well enough. But in the top 8, that's where it got me.
Yeah. That's awesome. So doing a bit of post nationals reflection here on your deck. Overall, how do you feel the choice to go Chane worked to work in your favor, or was it a good or bad decision, I guess, overall?
I think it worked out really well. So I had 2 Briars in my first 3 opponents. If I'd gone Prism, it was going to go really badly. If I'd had Viceroy, well, aggro mirrors is going to be pretty random anyway. So I think choosing Chane worked out really, really well for me. I know some of my mates picked Chane and it really didn't work out for them, but of course, that's what randomness does, right?
That's just the randomness. Yeah.
I would have changed the deck actually with that experience with how it was playing. I was running more non-attacks than I necessarily needed to. Well, than I felt like I needed to, and I think I went a little bit too far on them. So I would have cycled some of those out, tried to bring back in a third E-Strike, possibly would have gotten rid of the Command and Conquers, because they just don't do anything to Ultim at all, and they don't really do anything to Prism either, because she just plays whatever's in Arsenal anyway.
Yeah.
It's been like, cool, I played an Aura.
Right.
I was going to play it anyway. Cool.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
So
I can. Sorry, you go.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I think like it's not that like Gem just happens to give you 2 Briars, because in the event there's a lot of Briars. So
Yeah,
there's
there were a lot.
So I think I know if you go on Prism, and I know Nicholas, I don't think he got any Briars, because I think he just kept winning. That he just
them all.
He just didn't see. So like I just like Gem. It could have gone either way, right? You never know. So I think based on how many Briars there were, I think it's probably safe to say you get at least a Briar, at least a channel mount somewhere in the 3rd game. So somewhere in the first 3 games, and I feel like because they're so important for seeding and everything, you just win out the first 3 and try your best to hit all those like X1s if you absolutely have to. It might be Briar, right?
Yeah.
So
we really did not think there were going to be many Briar that made top table. Yeah. So if you dodged them in the first 3 games, you dodged them for the rest of the event.
Fair.
I was one of the ones who didn't dodge them, and I'm very, very lucky that I picked a deck that worked into them.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, switching gears now to Everfest. We're looking at some spoilers, and we've had a crazy week just lately.
Oh, man.
Just the Discord is just on fire. People saying good, bad, trash. Everyone just kind of voicing their opinions. We were curious to know your opinions on some of the cards that came out specifically for Kano or Chane. Are there any interesting cards that you think could kind of be meta shifting for these 2 heroes specifically?
So I think Kano's seen 2 of the coolest cards so far. Well, one of them's not a wizard card, but it's only wizards going to be using it that much. Potion of Deja Vu is insane. Like, that card is going to do horrible things to Blitz.
Oh, 100%. I said the same thing about an hour ago in the video.
Eric and I were just talking about Potion of Deja Vu, yeah.
I am infamous in local armories for sitting down, drawing 4 cards, pitching 7 cards, and then going, oh look, 20 damage. Got anything? Nope. Good game. So Potion of Deja Vu it really, really is going to address some of Kano's reasonably limited weaknesses, which is when you draw your reds. Being able to do something like pitch a Tome of Aetherwind to Crucible, pitch 2 blues to Kano, hold resolution on both of them, crack the potion, put the tome and your 2 blues on top. Oh look, I drew my 2 blues again. And
what a coincidence!
Activation. What a coincidence! Right. That combos with Gaze the Ages, I think. There's just so much potential for that card to go absolutely insane. And then the other wizard card, of course, is Scour.
Oh yeah. The aura killer.
The aura killer. The things you can target like that. So Chane is going to hate seeing the bloody thing, because you're just going to shoot his soul shackles. The token auras. Oh, would you look at that? 9 arcane damage, mate. You got anything?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Like, targeting Seismic Surge, Quicken, Embodiments of Earth or Lightning. There's Rune Chants.
Rune Chants as well, that's right.
Someone's got a Rune Blood barrier out, and they're like, oh yeah, it's a 2-for-1 deal here.
Yeah.
It's destroy everything you've got. It's amazing. So I'm very much looking forward to Scour. I think the other one, Wildfire, it's a bit of a paradigm shift for Wizard. Like, you're looking at Forked Lightning in the deck and being like, ooh, I think Wildfire actually is a functional replacement for this. Like, you need to
Yeah.
build your deck differently. Chain Lightning snapbacks become a lot more powerful. Red Zap off top of deck becomes a hell of a lot more powerful with that card out.
Mm.
And I'm really, really keen to see exactly what we can pull off with Wildfire, because
Mm.
it's going to make some very weird OTK turns a lot easier to pull off, and no one's going to see them coming for the first
Right.
little while.
Yeah.
No, I
It'd be a great
totally.
time to kind of show those combos out because we're all still in discovery phase, right? Still
Yep.
discovering combos, so that's awesome. So going into kind of the recent bannings that we've seen, Chain lost his seeds initially, which was a big hit. I was wondering how you thought that, if at all, Plunder Run had affected the Chain list at all. Is it a big hit? Is it something that Chain can live without? Wanted to
So
hear your thoughts about Plunder Run. Yeah.
Plunder Run, like, I don't want Plunder Run to have been banned. I'm looking at my poor boy Katsu being like, well, Katsu
Right.
is just so goddamn dead as
Some
an aggro deck
heroes
now.
just needed it, and they weren't even
Yep.
that good to begin with. Yeah.
Plunder Run by itself is not too problematic in Chain. Like, you play it at the beginning of the turn, then you bounding demigod them, and you feel like you're doing efficient things. But it's not too busted. The problem with Plunder Run was Spellbound Creepers. Oh, you're not blocking. How about I draw a card and the next one goes in for 3 more, and I get an action point for 1
Mm,
pitch? It's insane!
right.
And that's how I won the first game at Nationals, actually, was my opponent didn't block a flock, and then I just was like, okay, well, cool, here's a Plunder Run of Spellbound Creepers. Oh, look at that, I've got an action point. I've got a card. Here's 4 more
Mm,
attacks. It's turn 2.
right.
Here's 15 damage. Pass your blocks. I'm sorry, mate. What you gonna do?
Yeah.
That's
So
dirty.
it's
Yeah.
definitely an interaction that was probably a bit too powerful, but I don't think it necessitated a plunder ban.
Mm,
I think that we very easily could have just seen plunder unrestricted
Yeah.
to only running 1 color,
right. Yeah.
and that would have been a little bit. Maybe it would have successfully nerfed Briar and Chain without hitting Bolton or Katsu.
Mm,
Yep. Yeah, I
But
right.
of course, LSS are probably a lot better at these decisions than I am,
yeah, they
and I'll just
obviously.
be sad about them. Seeds, though, like, the Seeds ban was warranted.
Mhm.
Seeds could
Yeah.
be a 0 cost blood debt with Go Again as its only text, and the card would still be overpowered.
It'd still be good.
It could be a 1 cost blood debt non-attack with no card text, and it would still be a little bit good.
Mm,
That's fair.
just
I
to
got
enable all the cards that need to be played before, not non-attack action,
yeah,
right?
all the
Yeah.
fat riff binds and such. But no,
At that too.
I think
Yeah.
I definitely agree that I think before with the restrictions on Plunder Run would have been a different approach they could have taken. Maybe they felt it was like not. I don't usually like full bans for the entire, especially when there's multicolor.
Yeah.
But obviously
Right.
they
Yeah.
did what they did. But that's totally fine, as you said. I definitely Spellbound was it's a hell of an equipment.
And
Still is a hell of an equipment.
yeah, and on the topic of bans, I think Ball Lightning, I think has been pretty well shown in New Zealand that if you get a large enough pool of really good players, that we will just work out how to deal with Briar.
Mm,
I understand that international armories were seeing declining player numbers because Briar was oppressive, and sort of that example of how to beat it wasn't there because New Zealand and Australian Nats were so heavily delayed.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Ball Lightning ban, I can see the Ball Lightning ban, but also I suspect the Ball Lightning ban was a little bit because everyone was sick of the rules questions.
Possibly. Yeah,
It
that's
was
true.
Because
difficult to
Counting.
understand as well.
every armory, every game, you had a rules question, an
Yeah.
interaction with Ball Lightning, and
Yeah.
it's just a
How
pain.
many times I have to tell you this?
Yep.
No, that's fair. Well, that
Yeah.
all makes sense. We're gonna roll into the deck deck quite shortly. So
Yep.
for everyone who's been watching so far, stay tuned. We're gonna do a quick template shift when I snap my hands. And now we're back with Kieran for the deck tech portion of the video here. So we have up on FabTV the New Zealand Nationals chain list here that made 5th through 8th. We've just corrected everything. It's just 5th through 8th now. So we're gonna roll through here. We do have a couple questions for Kieran that so I'll be driving the FabTV stick, and Rob will be driving the interview stick here, and we'll let Kieran kind of walk through his choices and any kind of spicy pieces he wants to explain here. So take it away, Rob.
All right. So, looking at the meta that you were in for this nationals, how did you approach building Chane? And yeah, were there some kind of interesting sideboard choices that you had to make? Yeah.
So my equipment's pretty standard, I think. Rosetta Thorn is a absolutely cracked weapon. You're never not running it in any matchup anymore. It's just so good. I mean, if we had Duskblade, we could run Duskblade, but they quite rightfully recognize that that card could not be allowed to exist. So I've got Aether Ironweave in there just for when I really feel like I need to go extremely aggro and I'm not too scared of what they're going to be returning. I practically never use it, but if I sat down against a player who's really, really slow and controlly, like an Oldhim who I know isn't going to be doing anything spicy, I'll bring in Aether Ironweave.
Right.
I knew there's going to be a lot of Viscera, like the Aucklanders, Rohan in particular, are very strong on Viscera. It's a deck a lot of us have been talking about for 2.5 years, is eventually someone will be good enough on this deck and the meta will be good enough that this deck will just destroy a meta. So I brought Crown of Dichotomy when normally you just don't bother because you really like being able to use Skullcap to block.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else is standard. Carrion Husk, it just blocks everything. It blocks Command and
Oh,
Conquer, it blocks Herald of Judgment, Erudition. You name it, Carrion Husk is the solution.
That's fair.
Yep. My
Understandable.
reds. My reds are a little bit of a weird mix of things. So I really liked what I think Arbun's list from
The Hong Kong
Hong Kong.
Nationals.
Yeah, from Hong Kong.
Yep.
I
mm,
really liked his list and based a lot of my reds off that. So I brought in sort of the spicy one of Come to Fight because it blocks. People see it, they go, "Oh, that's spicy. Do I have to worry about that for the rest of the game?" And it's not sort of screwing up my pitch too much.
Right.
Probably would get rid of it now for another E-Strike. I was only running two of them because I could only fit two of them. And considering 2 games, I got attack screwed. Yeah.
mm,
Yep. As I mentioned, 2 Command and Conquers, they're really good for when you have to go second in a Runeblade mirror because it
Mm-hmm.
forces 2 cards off them or their husk first if they're a chain.
Right.
But does nothing into Oldhim. So I probably actually would side one of these completely out for not entirely sure, maybe another Exude,
Right.
just because it doesn't really fix the matchups it needs to. E-Strike, man, E-Strike's great.
Mm-hmm.
Exude Confidence. Exude Confidence is another card that really heavily benefits from Spellbound Creepers, because
Mm-hmm.
you can get your go again on it without breaking the combat chain by
Yep.
just getting one off Spellbound. So you can do really, really, really nasty combos with that and any of the non-attacks, especially the Minnowisms.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the reds are standard. Like you're never going to pre-bans to see a pile of reds that aren't 3 Ghostly, 3 Howl, 3 Plunder, 3 Riftbind,
mm.
etc.
Right. No, that's fair. So obviously on the FATB, nice big band list on the Plunder run. So if you had to remake
Yep.
the
Yeah.
if you had to remake the list like just based on the fact that I need a replacement for Plunder run, what would that replacement be at the moment? Let's ignore Everfest. Let's pretend.
Ignoring Everfest,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's really, really hard to make a call right now. Like
Mhm.
Do you like
I've
Captain's
played
Call?
around. I mean, it's good enough, but it's not. It doesn't do quite enough of the things I need it to do.
Mm-hmm.
What I would probably do is look at some of the jankier Runeblade cards, like Bloodspill Invocation.
Yeah, I was gonna mention
Which,
that. Yeah.
look, don't get me wrong, the card sucks. It's
For
just
now.
one,
For now.
and there's an aura that does sweet fuck all. But when someone doesn't want to block, and you sit down and you go, look, here's a bunch of attacks that are coming that are really annoying to block, it's pretty good. And if I was doing that, I'd probably shake some things around, maybe remove the exudes for meet and greets or consuming volitions,
Mm-hmm.
turn it into a little bit more of a deck that gets its early game power through these really awkward blocks that you don't want to block, but fucking meet and greets got go again, and consuming just it's a beautiful card against aggro decks. So
Oh, yeah.
Briar sees it consuming, especially post errata, and goes, oh, really? It's super good in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Scrolling down to my yellows. Art of War is fairly standard. Yellow Captain's Call is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice modal card that just does everything really. I
Right.
brought the one Bounding Demigod just because I needed a little bit more. I wasn't happy with my Blood Debt in testing. I needed a few more to get that consistency early.
Right.
Consistency. Chane deck doesn't have consistency. Um, and the one yellow Seeping Shadows is when you're playing against a Bravo or an Ultim that you're expecting to try to take the game really late. When just say, I just need 5 action points in this turn. Seeping
Fair.
Shadows gives you one of them.
No, fair enough. Makes sense, yellow wise.
Yep. My blues are My blues are actually probably the spiciest part of the deck. So I've got the standard things like the Flock of the Featherwalkers, the Bounding Demigons, the Morvrian Skies. Energy Potion, I love Energy Potion in this deck. It gives you way more kill threat a lot earlier than most people are expecting. And I will actually crack Spellbound Creepers to play an Energy Potion early. Especially if I've already hit you with the sword this turn.
That's
You'll never see
interesting.
it coming.
That's interesting. No, I
And
never actually thought to like chain that together. Usually, when you think of creepers, you think of like go again, keep going,
Good go
attacks.
again ability.
Yeah,
That's
keep
right.
going, keep
Yeah.
going.
And likewise, the Time Snap potions, I've got 2 of them in there. One mainline, I always run it. One that I bring in only for the really, really slow matchups. Again, Spellbound Creep is that. I'm getting an action point later that off this card now. Really, really good into Prism.
Yeah.
This is your biggest answer to Arclight Sentinel, and you need an answer to Arclight Sentinel because if they Arclight your Clips turn, you're kind of just wrecked.
Yeah. That's
Because
fair.
if you attack it with an attack, the attack doesn't actually happen, so you can't activate Spellbound Creepers.
Yep. You need to have attacked. It doesn't resolve. There's no
Right.
attack.
Yep.
That's fair.
Good point.
Yep.
Yeah.
3 invert existence, like it's 6 arcane damage. The beautiful thing about it against Viserai is you, as I mentioned earlier, you target his Rattlebones target. Against Chane, it completely changes the game.
Yeah.
Because normally the Chane game is I go to 1 and then I kill you. In this, you can't go to 3 or I shoot you, so you can't go to 4. Or I shoot you for 2 arcane on this and then you take 2 blood debt from the cards I just banished. I've got
I
2 of
love.
them, you can't go to 8.
I love this in the mirror, and you
3 of them,
do it on their turn.
yep.
Just
If I've
give
got
them
3 of
blood
these and
debt.
you end your turn and you're on 12 life, I can kill you.
Yep.
It's insane.
It's beautiful.
It totally changes the math for the Chain Mirror, and it gives you basically a whole turn of your opponent sitting being like, oh god, everything sucks now. So it's really, really good for that. The Gorg Tome, I probably, in retrospect, should not have run Gorg Tome because I have to side it out against the Briars.
Yeah.
And in fact, I kept on drawing it before my opponents do theirs, and then they got draw 2 off it, and I only got draw 1. I'm sitting there feeling like a little bit of a fool. So, given I was expecting a lot of Briars, and that they get more of Gorg Tome than I do, even discounting that I got it first, I probably shouldn't have been running it.
Fair
Is it
enough.
amazing in certain other matchups? But there are other amazing cards that I could have been running there instead.
No, fair enough. This is a non-attack. Your blood spill invocation definitely can take that spot over.
You'll bring it back into the meta and bring that card back.
And
Single-handedly.
then I know a lot of chains don't like running blue unhallowed rites, but I think the card's amazing because it lets you play your Health and Beyonds really early, and then you get them all back. And you do it again. You get them all back again, and you do it again.
I'll do it again.
So, one of the things that a lot of chains try to do is they go for this one big kill turn. Where
Yeah.
they're like, I'm going to hit you with 15 cards and summon Ursa, and then I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
You don't need to. You can have 3 or 4 pretty big turns through the game that shreds their armor, that catches them and gets rid of their arsenal, and then just recur the house again. And you do it again and again. And it's a lot more reliable and a lot more powerful than just waiting until the end of the game. Because if they
Yeah.
play a channel like Frigid on your single big turn, you're really screwed. If you've had 3 big turns and they only channel like Frigid one of them, then they're losing, not you.
Fair enough. Well, that makes sense. I like the 1. I think I wouldn't like it if there were like 2 or 3. I think that's a little bit too much. But I do agree that Howl from Beyond is a hell of a card. Just to make any small turn a big turn. +3 is nothing to scoff at. Comes out of nowhere. Doesn't even cost that much, relatively speaking.
I mean, it doesn't cost you a card if you've banished it.
Yep.
And if you're playing Chain at a nationals level, you know when you're going to banish them or not when you put them back into deck. You're probably sitting there going, sorry, mate, I'm just going to count my deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, every couple of turns to double check.
That's
And
right.
So whenever those go back in, you know you're going to banish them. They come out banished, and your opponent goes, "Oh no, it's another turn of these." It's great, amazing card.
That makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah. So are there any matchups that you'd consider running more than 60 cards in? I'm not sure if you ever run more than 60 or if there are some matchups where you would consider it.
So I run 60 or 64 if I'm going first or second, because that lines up my banishes and my pitches a little bit nicer. When I need to be really, really thin, which is playing against other chains, Channelmount Heroic Briar, maybe Agrokatsu. It's not too many of those anymore, unfortunately. The rest of the time I'm running 72 card Runeblade pile minus 1 or 2 cards that I don't like at any given time. Because a lot of decks, it's just, if you sit down against an Ultim and you don't know whether this weird Matt Rogers aggro version or an incredibly dirtly slow version, it is more detrimental to be caught out with a too small deck than a too large deck.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Unless you get caught by all these potions, which I did, but
yeah,
that happens sometimes.
That happens.
No, that makes sense. So it's 60, 64, or like everything in the kitchen sink other than a couple knobs. Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough.
Awesome. And if you know in advance if your opponent's going to be taking a more fatigue strategy against you, or you might even figure out like mid game that they're pivoting, or they're not pivoting, but they're changing their strategy to be more fatigued, right? I guess kind of like Prism did at one point because you didn't have your Eclipse. Do you change your playstyle at all into those kind of matchups when you know they're trying to fatigue you?
Yeah.
Or does it kind of same? Okay, yeah.
Really, in Flesh and Blood, there's 2 effects from you playing an attack, right? Either you're damaging them or you're damaging their hand. And if you're going for life damage, there is only 1 point of damage that actually matters, and that's the first point of damage after they stop being able to stop them. Every point up until them is just trading your cards for their cards and nothing happens. Except you're running out of deck faster than they are and they'll fatigue you. So if I'm playing against someone I know is going to fatigue me, I don't want to be playing these incidental cards that damage their next turn, that just sap cards from them, because trading a card of mine for a card of theirs just isn't worth it. So I'm banking up for much bigger turns. I'm aiming to pull off interactions that catch them out a lot more, such as the cheeky Art of War after the first attack has been declared, things like that. Right. If I'm going for just pure aggro, then, well, every card off them is a card off them that's happy by me, because eventually my hands are going to get so big that I can just run over them anyway. Aggro decks tend to not, or people who aren't fatiguing because they don't feel comfortable fatiguing, tend to have cards in their deck that interrupt the fatigue strategy. 2 blockers, no blockers. Their own blood debt. So I suppose the 2 most extreme examples of this is a fatigue Ultim. You've got to have a turn big enough to go through Crown of Seeds, defense reactions, the Ultim reaction. You've got to have something in place to stop the ice defense reaction, Biting Gale, or ice on his effect from actually really interrupting you. And you've got to be able to do this when there isn't a channel like Rigid out. So you're setting up, as I mentioned previously, 2 or 3 big turns, where the first 5 cards of the turn are just getting rid of his hand, and then the final 3 cards in the turn are actually doing 5 to 10 damage. Against, say, Briar, Chane is favored into Briar, I think, because you don't stop hitting them with massive hands. They never get a chance to sort of re-establish their pile of embodiments of Earth. Whereas Viserai sort of goes big turn, small turn, big turn, small turn, so every second turn they're getting their embodiments back. So against a Briar, I'm going to be going in, and I just don't want them to ever have a card in hand. So I'll be firing off these Demigons for 4 and Riftbinds for 5 instead of for 11. I'll be Unhallowed Rightsing with no targets there just because they don't want to take 4 damage because they know my next turn's going to be just as big and their turn's already a little bit rubbish. And just keeping that pressure on them the entire time.
Right. Oh, that makes sense.
There is, however, a Briar strategy that would work really poorly against, which we see in Tom Penny's list, the only Briar to make the top 8, where his game plan is to play it really slow, and then he tomorrows all of his Channelmount Heroics back. Which is an awesome strategy. I love it, and I'm extremely glad I didn't have to face it.
That would have been painful.
I mean, it would have come down to, did I put enough pressure out that his souls were a problem? Because again, lots of 2 blockers in a Briar deck.
Right.
If he's not getting embodiments of Earth.
Right.
Yep,
Right.
makes sense.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I had.
Yep.
So
I
yeah.
have one. I have just one ender here. So I'm looking at this list, and I'm just trying to put together. I know what I'm gonna bring Everfest a little bit, just because we gotta talk about Everfest a little bit. And
Yep.
every
Yep.
kind of
That's right,
forum,
we
it's
got it.
Everfest, or it's Everfest, right?
Oh, I'm
So
so excited.
I know there weren't any Shadow Runeblade cards specifically. I don't think there will be any kinds of those cards like Light Warrior, Shadow Runeblade. I don't think those are gonna be in Everfest. However, there were a fair amount of Runeblade cards, a lot of spicy ones too. Um,
Yeah.
is there anything you saw that you've liked? Maybe not. It could be in this particular build that you would exchange, kind of fit in piece, or maybe build around a different kind of chain. Is there anything that kind of caught your fancy?
I'm just looking at the list of spoilers now to
Oh,
try to
fair
remember
enough.
them.
Yeah.
I think Swarming Gloomvale has a lot of potential in a chain list.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got this beautiful pile of modal effects. It's a zero cost red that blocks for 3, so we like the card in general. And it has this beautiful line at the bottom of it, which says, when this hits a hero, they can't prevent arcane damage from sources you control this turn.
Mm,
Now, I've talked a lot about these invert existences that I'm running. So I'm looking at that card being like, this is a must block. Like, if I have an invert out, they cannot let this 0 for 3 hit. But it's 0 for
yes.
4 of can't remember the condition.
There's two
Except
or
from
more.
beyond it.
He has 2 auras
Yep.
for go again, and it's 4.
Right. So if I played a Howl from Beyond,
Mm-hmm.
it's coming in for 7. Ooh, that's starting to get spicy. That's
Mm,
difficult to block. And then it leans really well into a strategy where you're like, here is a really annoying must block. Oh, look, your turn sucks and I'm setting up. And so I'm going to be looking at a chain build that is a little bit more setup focused and goes for a little bit more of an OTK, using these big threats to sort of sap people. And then cards like the other Runeblade, the happy fellow that makes lots of room chance.
Oh,
Forgotten the name.
I've got him. I've got him up
What?
right now. Revel and Runeblood.
Revel and Runeblood. That's it.
Revel
Yeah.
and Runeblood.
Yep.
Yep.
Like Revel and Runeblood looks absolutely amazing for Viscerai, but I'm looking at them for Chain. Like, a lot of people don't run one null rune against Chain,
Mm.
and this card will punish that horrendously.
Yeah. Four
Oh,
runes.
Is it
Nice.
good? I don't think it's necessarily good. It'll be fun to try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
The cards I'd actually be really looking at for inclusion that aren't Runeblade cards
Mm-hmm.
are the potions.
Oh yeah. What kind of potion are you looking at? Bring it up here.
Trying to remember what the names of all of these are.
Yeah. I can never remember
So
this. Too
Amulet
many.
of Assertiveness is an interesting one. When this hits, banish the top card of your deck. If it's an attack action card, you may play it this turn.
Mm.
Activate only if you have 4 or more cards in hand. Normally sounds like a difficult thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
unless I'm playing from banish.
Unless you're
Really.
Chain. That's right.
And that, again, sort of leads into this really odd strategy of just going, look, I'm just going to sap you constantly, because this turns the first attack of every turn into a must block,
Right.
Mm.
because otherwise it might just get a bigger turn.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
That totally
And
makes
I mean,
sense.
it's probably a meme, that one. It's probably a meme.
It'll be fun to
Bottom
try
line,
regardless, I think.
The one I am
I'd love to see this be used.
100% running is Talisman of Cremation.
Mm.
Oh yeah, that's the. I can
When
bring
you-
that up now.
Yep.
So
When
wait,
you play a
that's
card
the-
from your banished zone,
Yeah.
destroy it and name a card. Banish all cards with the chosen name from each opposing hero's graveyard.
Ah, yes.
Because this hits, again, it does the invert thing of hitting targets my opponents are attempting to bring back.
Right.
But most importantly is it lets me do things like banish all of Akatsu's Whelming Gust Waves.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Katsu can kind of do the same thing. In the mirror, though, this card can kill people from like
That's
15 in the mirror, where they end their turn and then you invert them and banish all their bounding demigods, and they take 10. Like,
That's
it
amazing.
just seems too funny not
It's
to.
funny. Yeah.
And because it's got Go again, you can actually just flash it in off Spellbound Creepers.
Yeah.
Right.
I totally like was thinking about like, well, who's the easiest who can actually run this? It's like, oh, well, it's Chain. Obviously, it's got to be Chain. You can run it off creepers. You can run it off anything because you banish super easily, right? Other than like
Yeah.
Kano, Katsu, they banish, but any shadow
Right.
banishes. But like Chane really likes this card quite a bit, so I definitely see the merit here
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potion of Deja Vu is an interesting one.
Hmm.
for Chane.
It's amazing in Kano, but for
Yeah.
Chane, there is some potential for some quite interesting tricks here.
Hmm.
Like destroying it at the end of their turn, so I banish something that would otherwise be in hand, like a Rift Bind.
Hmm.
Is it
Yeah,
better smoothing?
because
Is it worth running the card?
Right.
Probably not.
Right.
yeah, it does
But it's the
allow.
sort of thing that I'd like to look at and try to work out whether it actually has a place.
I think
Probably
I
doesn't, but
definitely it doesn't look as strong as Commission just off the top, like just by looking at it, but like being able to fix your top just by pitching things like with Blood Debt, like the ones that are Rift Bind, as
yeah.
you said, that are way more powerful coming out of Banish. It definitely it doesn't do as much of the in Kano it fixes your all red hands. It's very very clear, but in Chain it's really kind of like I need to fix my banishes
Yeah.
in response. You could do well. I guess on your turn you just fix it. You end your turn, count it up, and be like, all right, well I'm gonna be banishing this card
Oh,
regardless, right? So
yeah.
I
So
definitely see
danger is
that.
that you can't do it in your turn because then you draw the cards again. It's got to be done in their turn,
Hmm.
which makes it a bit
Right, right,
harder.
right. That's true
So of
because they
course,
have
invert
to.
gives you that instant to fix one card. It's awkward. There's definitely
Mm,
things you can do with
yeah,
shadow puppetry triggers or plunder run if it still was in the game.
yeah.
I think there's a couple of the new cards that seem pretty cool for top of deck interactions that would definitely be worth looking at.
Hmm.
But again, like with the exception of the ProQuest, we don't have any major events coming up, so I'm looking forward to testing a couple of these out and sort of fun fuck around and
Yeah.
find out decks.
Exactly.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. No, that was great. I appreciate your time quite a bit here. I
Yeah. It
know
was awesome talking to you. Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of. I mean, I think I've seen like three different videos of Hayden and him talking about Australian Nats. But as
Yep.
far as like the New
Hmm.
Zealand Nats, I don't think I've seen a lot of coverage from any of the top eight
Maybe it
players.
just
And
doesn't get to us. Maybe it's
I
still
mean,
somewhere
maybe
that we
So
haven't seen
I'm
yet.
not.
Yeah.
I think
so I know
it's
Nick's had an interview with Session Blood that'll be coming out soonish,
Mm.
but
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Session Blood. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair.
relatively less. Yeah.
Hmm. No, it's true, and I feel like it's a great opportunity to pick your brain about this deck. You cleared it quite well on it. You had a strategy.
Mm.
You came in at 1:30 in the morning, finalized it, and took it as far as RNGesus could take you, pretty much, and it worked out quite well. Congratulations on your accomplishments. Definitely. Ugh,
Oh, thank you.
just a small notch up for top 24. Just a small little step up
Just
there.
a tad. Yep.
Just a test. So appreciate all your time, and for all our viewers here, if you enjoyed the content, if you have any other questions, maybe Kieran will take a look at the comments and he'll grace you with his answer here if you're lucky enough to have a question. So feel free to like, comment, subscribe. This video will be on Spotify. I want to make this as widely available as possible for anyone who wants to listen to the car ride. Hear Kieran's thoughts about Everfest, Chane, Kano, and what else. Me and Rob are here on the side just for a little color commentary, of course. And with that, Kieran, appreciate your time. Rob, I always appreciate your time, right? Busy
Sure.
guy.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so with that, wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Bye for now.